America will not have to import goods from China anymore because we can produce them. Currently, the average production of any goods here in the United States takes about $70 an hour, no matter what it is. With bots, you'll bring that down to $1. In China, the average price of production is $2. With a bot, they will bring it down to $1. America will not have to import goods from China anymore because we can produce them. The end result will be a much higher abundance.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where, as everybody knows, we always bring you great guests once a week at least. And today we have something special because today is the 500th episode. So anybody who's here from the very beginning, you have seen all the different things that we have gone through, and we have a special guest. I'm super proud because we're fellow shareholders in Tesla. Alexandra Merz, Tesla Boomer Mama, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Axel. And what a privilege and honor to be number 500. Thank you so much.
Yeah, some people might say that we planned it that way, but it literally is just in the
That's
sequence.
true.
So it's very cool on the other hand, so we can make a big fuss out of it. Alexandra, before we talk about Tesla and all the things and retail investors and the things that you're famous for, tell the audience a little bit, who is Alexandra Merz? How did you get to and what are you doing? And what is basically the story of you?
Well, so I'm 59 years old. That's going to be a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I'm a mother of, 5 young adults now. I'm very proud of my children. I'm German, as you can all hear. I come from the Black Forest, Schwarzwald, where I grew up in a little town of 3 times nothing. And my parents were always quite ambitious for me. I was the oldest of 3. They sent me to the United States when I was 15 for an exchange year, so my English got better. And then I studied in London and in Germany at the, what is now called Reutlinger Fachhochschule or whatever. I don't know what it's called anymore, but it was this European studies of Betriebswirtschaft, which were, very famous at that period. And after that, started my job in finance at the Deutsche Bank in Paris, where I became very quickly a fund manager. I was initially the first year in the trading room and then became a fund manager. And then Commerzbank in Paris hired me because they were actually managing all the Luxembourg funds out of Paris, but needed a German speaker. And here I was. And that's how I got to manage the biggest European investment funds for Commerzbank. I loved that, did that for a couple of years. And one of the funds was rated by a rating agency called Moody's, one of the 2 big ones, S&P and Moody's, and then there's Fitch, and then there's Scope and some others. And that's how I met Moody's, and then Moody's hired me from there, and I became their VP in charge of European fund ratings. I became senior credit officer during my career there. I was 7 years there. I was notably for the German speakers, they actually know me because I was in charge of the ratings of offene Immobilienfonds, open-ended real estate funds, which was a whole chapter of my life. And I was a lot on TV of that. It was something because we had to develop the whole methodology and get all that done. At the end of Moody's, when I left them, I set up my own rating agency, which is part of what is now Scope, the European rating agency. I did that for 3 years and then sold my shares and left finance in 2007. Finally thought I'd look after my 5 kids. My husband, thank heavens, always did a very good job in being the best father ever. And so we were living in the south of France then. And for a while already, for 7 years, I lived in Paris, and then since 2000 in the south of France, in Mougins. And I thought, well, what can I do now, right? I'm done my career. Now my kids are growing up. My kids very quickly felt that I should be much less involved than I thought I should be involved. And so I thought, okay, how about I rent out our house for the summer? We usually did that and traveled and rented out our home. And my then accountant told me, well, you have to become a realtor for that if you want to start renting out houses. So I thought, okay, how do you become a realtor? I had no idea. It was my husband buying the house. I was not even involved really into that. And so I became a real estate agent and opened my own agency. And so first summer I had my house for rental. A couple of months later, I had 40 houses for rental. A year later, I had 150 houses for rental and started selling houses. So between 2007 and 2014, I rented, I don't know, thousands of houses and sold hundreds of houses. And we actually became one of the premier real estate agencies in the south of France in that time. loved it. I mean, I was always very professionally driven. And my husband kept on complaining. If to know, my husband is French, Alsatian, and he had moved from the United States to be with me. And he kept complaining about how France is not what he wanted to be. And he really wanted to be back in the United States. And so in 2013, we did a nice trip along the West Coast and Grand Canyon and decided that we're going back to America. So I sold everything and we moved to Santa Barbara in 2014. So that's now 11 years ago. I needed a project because we needed to come here on an E2 visa. So the E2 visa was to do consulting and financial analysis for certain type of investment visa called the EB5. I very quickly understood that this whole market was such a swamp that I didn't want to get into it. So I initially did mainly E2 visas, about 400 E2 visas for clients. And then I looked into EB2 National Interest Waiver, which is a green card for entrepreneurs, and we've been doing that successfully since 2019. I've helped about 300 people get green cards. Our success rate is 99%, which is unheard of because we really do everything. And so very successful business. We're a 5-women shop. It's my firm. And that's how I'm here. And then Tesla came. And that's where we are.
And when was that actually that, well, I don't know if Tesla came or you became a shareholder in Tesla. So,
yeah, better the second way around for sure.
so
So
what
when did that happen? Well, when we moved to the US, my husband, who is an engineer, wanted straight away an electric car. We tried in France having electric cars. They had the Renault Zoe, but they had so much wait time and whatever, so we could never put a hand on it. So when we came here, we were looking for electric cars. Tesla was at the beginning, and it was mainly, the S class. And what we needed with all our kids was more, bigger car and less prestigious car. So the one we found was the BMW i3, which was this little city hopper that BMW did as a compliance car in California, because at that period, any car seller who wanted to sell in California needed one electric car on the bench. And so they had this cute experiment, which was really a great car, small range, but great car. So we had that one. And since we came, we needed to build up our credit history. So we leased it from 2014 to 2017. Came 2017. And I wanted a Tesla Model 3. I actually had a deposit down, but they were in production hell. So I still couldn't put a hand on a Tesla. So we got a Chevrolet Bolt then. Was not as cute as the BMW, but a larger range. So it was a good workhorse, I'd call it, as a car. It was fine. I mean, we're German, so we love our cars. We love our Porsche and Mercedes and whatever. So there was that. So I came with a long history of 6 years of electric cars and 30 plus years of having nice luxury cars in my life. Finally, in 2020, just at the moment of COVID begins, and the lease was up of the Bolt, to finally put my hand on a Tesla. And so we could test drive it. We knew that the Bolt would expire, the Bolt lease would expire in May. So we test drove a Tesla in March. It was those moments where everything was, contactless, where you just got a card and picked up the card and got the car and whatever. So we did that a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it because it was such a life-changing thing. Got into the Tesla service center, picked up the car with the card, sat in the car. Now, remember, I had lots of luxury cars, at 6 years of EVs, started driving the car, and I said, oh my God, this is it. And then also remember, I was a fund manager. I was used to diversifying portfolios, and I mean, nothing more than 10%, the ones between 5 and 10%, not more than 40%, whatever. I had all my rules, hammered into my head.
Yeah, a little bit
and
like
I was
Tesla
driving,
right now.
it was crazy, right? I was driving with my husband in the car, and I said, you know what, we're selling everything. We're selling all our assets, and we're going all in on Tesla. And that was March 17th, 2020. And the next morning we sold everything. And luckily it was the lowest point of COVID. And that was it. And we are since then all in Tesla investors. And with all the ups and downs and heartbreaks and everything that comes with it. And the next day I woke up and I thought that was maybe a little bit courageous. How about you do a little bit more research? I mean, it's not as if I had not followed Elon and Tesla, but I mean, nothing of the financial analysis I usually would do before I invest in anything. And so that's why I started retroactively, in hindsight, building up my conviction. And I mean, it was, I mean, I never had any regrets, but it was crazy. It was really as if I was, guided to do it rather than thinking it through. But there we are. And more I learned, more I got reassured, but also more I realized things that weren't working right. And one especially was the fact that the rating agencies, remember my career as in a rating agency, did still value Tesla as a junk bond. So my first public action, I was using a little old Twitter account I had that was actually called New to Santa Barbara, which I had done in 2014, which just was sleeping there. I renamed it. We may get to the name later because it's so ridiculous. And I thought, okay, I have to start building this up and explain to people who I am and that this rating from Moody's and from S&P is so ridiculous. We have to put pressure there. And that's how it started. And so I went from 20 followers to...
Let me just interrupt for a moment because I really want to make a point on that spreadsheet. I mean, this is probably how I first got to even realize there's Alexandra out there doing this, because I was the other way around. And I think what you just explained and described so far is if I may say, a perfect example for emotional investment.
It is crazy.
That's one thing, and not unusual, and not maybe in the extreme a little bit unusual, but fundamentally not that unusual. But what I wanted to say is, I think this is, and still is to this day, a great service. I believe you have, if I read the spreadsheet correctly, or the way you publish it now, it is not just the ratings, it also shows comparison to other car manufacturers and their ratings and their numbers and so forth. But that's how I basically first discovered you, because you basically published this, and I could until then not really understand how is it that the company, when you look at the financials, and I think this is pretty much still true, at least in comparison to other car companies, and I know we don't want to really see it as such, but if you really only look at that part, even that, is basically no competition. The rating should be like AAA or something, if you know.
Yeah, and that's how they're trading, actually. Yeah, that is true. I mean, Tesla is the real example that rating agencies' value is just overhyped and there is no value anymore. And you're right. So when I started doing these tables, I did two things. I compared the top 30 mega caps, so the biggest companies in the world that are rated, because there are some companies that are not rated. So I took those out, but the ones that are rated. And I put in the 5 key parameters that rating agencies use to rate, right? So debt ratios, whatever. So I put all those, found them out for all 30 mega caps and for the 10 biggest car makers that are rated. There again, the Chinese are not rated, so they're not in there. And the field is moving. So I do it every quarter. As soon as the results are out, about 6 weeks after quarter end, I do for the last quarter. So there are now, I don't know, 10 or 12 of those tables out there. And I compare it to the ratings. Ratings move very slowly. I mean, some of those ratings changed over the last 3 years, but very, very few. One that did change is Tesla, because we finally shamed them enough after about 3 quarters that they gave us investment grade rating, which is still low, but whatever. But just for the fact, when Tesla does their asset backs with the leases, because they repackage the leases and put them in the market as a bond issue, they get AAA. They get AAA conditions. The little credit line that Tesla has, they hardly use, but they have one, is AAA conditions. So the market knows Tesla is AAA. The rating agencies still think it's triple B.
Yeah, and I've oftentimes, and I don't want to necessarily go off in that direction with our conversation, but I've oftentimes wondered if this is one of those typical examples of the good old boys network, versus something innovative, something new, something that I would even almost go as far as saying they're not really understanding. I don't mean the financial part, but like a lot of the other things. How can a company be like an AI leader, an electric car leader, and robotics leader, an energy leader, a lithium refining, and you know the whole list.
And hardly any debt.
And no
Hardly
debt
any debt.
and cash.
Exactly. But I mean, and there are actually a couple of subjects where, unfortunately, the rating agencies still have much too much power. What should have happened after 2008, where they were the main issue, right? If they would have not rated all this crap AAA, we would have not gotten where we are.
Right.
And that became clear in those congressional hearings. Yet the Obama administration at that moment just waved it off. And that was a major mistake. They should have been just, taken out and ridiculed, and the whole house of cards that they've built up should have just collapsed at that moment. And it did not. And that actually emboldened them, which is crazy enough, because they realized they can get away with murder and it doesn't matter. So that's the first point. The second point is that there is still the SEC clinging to some old rules of, if you're a pension fund and if you do that, you need to have so many AAA in your portfolio, whatever. So there are old rules that are completely redundant, but they're still there. And every time they promise us, we're going to check those out. Oh, yeah, we're going to do a hearing on them. And then suddenly nothing happens anymore. So this has been going on for years. I've been watching this because, like I told you earlier, I left that industry in 2007. There are good reasons why I left them, because I just saw it coming. And so now following this up 18 years and still nothing changed just shows you how slow that is. And that industry is so ripe for disruption. AI should kill them and will kill them, just because there's no point that this continues the way it is. And it's purely political. It's purely political. Let me give you another example. So S&P is very heavily involved also with the indices, right? You have the S&P 500, whatever. So when Tesla was supposed to be entered into the S&P 500 in 2020. S&P did everything to put it as late as possible. You probably remember that drama. And now there is another drama coming that I predict is Tesla is currently in the discretionary goods with the GMs and whatever, with the Amazons, meaning it is considered as a consumer good that is fluctuating with consumer cycles, and that's the bucket. Obviously, Tesla is one of the biggest ones in that bucket. But so when you have an ETF that does consumer goods, well, Tesla will be in it. But Tesla is not in the tech bucket, right? That is the Nvidias of this world, and even Uber is in the tech bucket, but not Tesla. So one moment Tesla will have to change of buckets. And it's actually a good long discussion where it should go. Should it go to energy? Should it go to tech? Should there be a super bubble for AI? I think we have to, but I can already promise you, albeit this is ripe, albeit, we're getting there, it will be very, very late, because what will be the consequence? That ETFs that are in the tech bubble, in that part of the market, will have to massively purchase Tesla, because it will just come in from one day to the other, and they will all have to stock up on it. And S&P and their friends want to delay this moment the longest possible, and it's got to make it much more difficult, because the longer it lasts, the more they will have to buy when it comes. But again, it's them, working against Tesla like forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much with you, but I also believe this is a beautiful bridge, maybe unintentionally, that you just built to bring us basically more to the current times. Because one thing, and anybody who is, and I am a little bit more interested, or at least equally interested in the macro picture that is going on. If I'm looking at something like Huawei, I'm looking at something like BYD, I'm looking at Tesla as an example, and I don't mean from the electric car perspective, but from what you just said about the S&P or similar indices. I personally believe, and you could add things like NVIDIA, for example, to say, okay, shouldn't there be something like a multifaceted category? But
yes.
the olden times, I've been around for a few days as well myself. There used to be a company called General Electric that had, engines and refrigerators and airplanes. And so there was like an example, and there were a couple other examples, but I don't think there ever was a multifaceted corporation bucket in the S&P or any of these indices. But more and more, it seems like when you look at the big picture, that we're going in the direction. And I think and I would really like to hear your opinion about it, the confluence of technology.
Yes, it is. It clearly is. And not only technology, because Tesla is so special because they actually produce, right? I mean, it's one thing what Apple has done. I'm not trying to diminish that, but they're not producing anything. They're subcontracting that. Any of the car suppliers that I know, other than some of the Chinese, they don't produce. They do the assembly of the 10, 20, 30, 40,000 supplier parts that they are getting. So Tesla is one of the most vertically integrated, and now even going into refinery and battery production and whatnot. So this multifaceted basket where it should be would have to have raw materials in it, would have to have energy in it, would have to have tech in it, would have to have software as a service in it, would have to have obviously also the whole vertical integration of manufacturing in it. And it would be a very lonely bucket because there are not many others that have as many facets into that multi-facets. It's really very, very special. And I think what the argument is going to be of S&P, well, we're not moving them out of the consumer discretionary bucket until one of the others is the clear leader. But that approach is completely wrong with Tesla because all of them will be leaders, right? So, I mean,
the
it's
only
gonna be a
reason
fight.
they could be in that bucket is for the tequila and the flamethrower, right?
There you go. There you go. And some merch. Yeah, let's do that.
And maybe the little, what is it called, cyber quad or something.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Now, so you touched already, and I'm really glad that we're already getting into that direction. One of the questions I kind of thought about asking you is, what would you call Tesla? And not from a categorization perspective, but what kind of a company is it if you had to give it some kind of label?
It's a funny question because we actually discussed that recently with my husband. And I'll come from an angle that probably nobody would have thought of. I think it's a planetary company in the way they are set up, in the way they are working each site they're having, be it in Shanghai, be it in Berlin, be it in Austin, Fremont, in a way to cover always one continent, right? So they are on this planet very specifically set up and building products and services for each of those regions. So I wouldn't call it global. I would really call it planet because then I have SpaceX, which is obviously extraplanetary. So,
Right.
That's my way of describing it. Now, obviously, that doesn't fit in any traditional description of any company, but I just feel what Elon has been doing with all his companies, we may get into the others he's setting up, but he's really solving global issues and trying to optimize that. We've had so many supply chain issues the last 10 years, notably COVID, but obviously now again with the tariffs, first tariffs from President Trump, now second tariff phase with President Trump. And Tesla is the only company, even better than the Chinese, set up to actually face these moments, right? They were the first ones to be able to continue building cars during COVID. They are the best set up for the tariff threats. I'm not saying they're perfectly set up, nobody is, but they're much better set up than anybody else. So the way this has been thought through, just from the supply side, I'm not even talking about the excellence of products and obviously AI and whatever else is coming, just from the setup of supply is uncomparable. When the war broke up in Ukraine, most car makers had issues because some part of their 40,000 parts came from Ukraine, right? And nobody even realized that that was the source of most of so many parts, not Tesla, right? And that speaks to the vertical integration and how everything from the beginning to the end has been thought out. There are cars driving around. I actually met this weekend a Model S driver, the Model S from 2017, and he's fully on FSD. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. An 8-year-old car. Try that with any other 8-year-old car. They may have the same cup holder than current cup holders, but certainly not the tech.
Yeah, I just saw on X, I think it was yesterday, from a German guy who said, I made it to 700,000 kilometers. My car is 10 years old. And guess what? No need to go to the shop. Tonight I'm going to get another over-the-air update. Right? Like, so that's just, and for that, I mean, one thing, and I know that you and Kevin asked Elon in one of, I think it was a shareholder meeting about advertising. One of the things I honestly have to say, And I don't even want to pretend to know how to do it well. I think the Dyna is, for example, a really good idea to do it, but in some way, shape, or form, getting more people more informed. And I mean, we're doing what we're doing today as part of that, but I think that is just 99% of the world community, the planetary community, let's call it, is not really aware anything more than maybe the brand name and maybe some political stuff, but not really what's
That's
underneath.
true.
Yeah, one thing
That
that I
is
want.
true. I have two. So excuse me to interrupt you. I have actually two ways of thinking about it. The first one is obviously Elon would hate to support traditional media with advertising because that's where the money goes, right? That's the first point. The second is that Tesla's business model, selling cars to individuals, is going to be less and less important, and I think they will eventually stop it. I think the cars will be a means of transportation, but not of ownership. The third point, which is actually an argument for advertising, is the problem by not advertising is you leave the door open to all your competitors in the different fields and to the press always being very hostile just because you don't support them, right? And so that third point always hits Tesla and its shareholders more than anybody else, just because the press feels we don't owe Tesla and Elon anything. Here we go. And obviously the clicks pay. Any Tesla and Elon click pays a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing from my perspective, I've been wondering for a long time. When people listen to us, when people see you with Herbert or with anybody else on YouTube shows or whatever the circumstances, I think it's pretty clear that there is at least in the retail community, retail shareholder community, a very, very strong belief in the company, in the vision of the company. And this extends, in my opinion, to these, what do we have, like almost 120,000 employees in the company, right? Like
Correct.
if you read any of the things when somebody leaves, yes, the media always makes it like a huge catastrophe because somebody says, I worked like a horse for 10 years, I need a break or something like that. That's how I interpret it. But what I'm getting at is I've been wondering, and I don't think it needs to be Elon or it needs to be anybody like us, but if it wouldn't be possible, if we can get 120,000 people to be fascinated enough by the vision to really work much more than the normal German, like 32 hours a week kind of thing, right? If that's possible, I'm wondering what would be a way to get that out more into the masses, right? Like a little bit like Harry Potter or something like that, right? You trigger the fascination for something that people can get behind. The other thing, that's just me thinking a little bit out loud. One thing I wanted to ask you is, I'm more and more, as I'm observing and tracking and reading and looking and watching, I'm more and more wondering this visionary status that I think everybody with half a brain would assign to Elon at this point has this forward-looking component. And I sometimes, like, I give you an example of what I mean when I'm wondering. I remember over and over and over, Elon was talking about, here is a way to print money. You just have to do a lithium refiner.
Yeah.
Please buy the stuff from Indonesia, bring it over here, refine
And
it,
clean it.
you print money. Over and over and over. And ultimately, since nobody did it, he said, okay, screw it, we do it
Let's do it.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, my question, Alexandra, is, did he anticipate that probably nobody would do it and he just wanted to be able to say, I told you so, and now we're doing it, and now you're all going to be, I should have afterwards? Or was it really, hey, I don't really want to get into this. I give everybody a heads up. If you want to,
Yeah.
you should. How do you see that? Did he, or is he every
Probably
time?
both. Probably both. I do believe, I don't believe that, especially with shareholders, Elon plays 4D chess. I don't believe that. I think he's always very upfront with us. And if you listen to the earnings call, I mean, as soon as I have half day off, I go to some old earnings call and just re-listen to it because there's always so many nuggets in it that you didn't hear the first time and even the second time around, and then it all becomes much clearer.
Right,
And
yeah.
and I always have this feeling that he's very sincere in what he says, but it's also true that they just couldn't have waited, right? Lithium is something that we need now. Lithium refinery and all rare earth refinery are actually not rare. They're not rare. But the extraction is a really dirty business. It is disgusting. It's a really disgusting business. And so lots of people don't want to do it. Often it takes a long, long time to get permits because wherever you do it, nobody really wants the leftovers of all this. And so I think he was very sincere in saying, no, but we don't want to do it. Please do it. We pay any price for it. You can have contracts as long as you want. Please do it. And then when nobody showed up, what choice do you have? And so he's doing it. He's doing it in a corner of Texas, where he probably got the permits quicker than, because obviously he has a direct link now to the governor of Texas. And as a Tesla shareholder, I'm very happy we have
Oh
it,
yeah,
just because
absolutely. It's just,
there's
it's,
no doubt.
like I think if somebody is really a fan or a follower, those kind of things kind of moving me a little bit, like how much is really like forward-looking visionary thinking and how much is, okay, I honestly wouldn't really want to do it, but it's a need that we have for vertically integration. Now, I also didn't finish my part of, you called it a planetary company. I'm really a fan, and more every day, a fan of Tony Seba. And I know CERN is a big fan too and talks about it all the time. I'm wondering if the label would be the company for the age of abundance.
True it is. And actually Elon speaks about what superabundance we're going to create. And I think lots of the stuff that's happening politically at the moment prepare us for that. I think the tariff policy of President Trump, albeit it's very confusing, and there are days I'm very tired of it. I think tired is the right word. It just tires me. Um, but I do see where America can, in very few years, like hardly ever before, make an enormous jump in productivity. I do believe, and I think the politicians have understood that bots will replace lots of positions here in the United States. We can maybe talk about, what that means. What does it mean for unemployment? What does it mean for social unrest? What does it mean for our comfort level? But the end result will be a much higher abundance. America will not have to import goods from China anymore because we can produce them. Currently, the average production of any goods here in the United States takes about $70 an hour, no matter what it is, be it food or be it whatever. The cost that goes into producing something, the cost for an hour is $70. With bots, you'll bring that down to $1. In China, the average price of production for any good is $2. With a bot, they will bring it down to $1. So and China needs bots just because of their silly one-child policy. There's a whole generational shift, and they need more workers and they need bots. Us, it's less a question about needing bots. It's much more that we have a gap of $69 between what we're currently paying to produce to what will it cost, and that will allow us to stop importing and produce here. And so when you have that vision, when you understand the abundance that comes from it, the 69 times multiplier, because that's the money that will be there to be distributed to fund healthcare, to fund whatever else, and a new society and a new societal meaning has to be built up, because lots of the last 3, 4, 5, probably even 10 generations were built on educating your kids to work hard. Suddenly it will be a different education that you have to give your children of, it's not working hard, it's maybe working smart, but it's also thinking about what in this age of abundance will be needed and how can you procure that. So the whole thing is shifting, and it may shift as quickly as 5 to 10 years. There will be resistance. I'm not saying everybody will understand this quickly, and lots of people just want everything to stay the same. But Tony Seba sees it very well, and I think Elon sees it very well, and that's why he invested so heavily in XAI, clearly, because between the bots of Tesla and AI and soon AGI, that's where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, just as a little, and I love this conversation that we're kind of like two people that are really looking into this in quite a bit of depth. I think we can help at least my audience to learn a little bit more about it. To me, this XAI is also an example for the reasons Elon gave, and in a sense, to me at least, a little bit an example similar to the lithium refinery.
Correct.
In the sense of, founding it, I totally buy this argument that people didn't want to be a member in a 120,000 people company. They wanted to have
Completely agree.
equity and stuff like that. They wanted to have like freedom. They wanted to be very focused. All
And that
that.
already worked out, by the way, right? Because if
Yeah,
you see the valuation now, they were completely right to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I could also see, and this is another version of this question. I wonder if at some point Elon said, okay, I think we need somewhere between probably 200,000 and 700,000 NVIDIA, H100 equivalents or Dojo equivalents. Who can do this for us? And just heard crickets or the stupid argument that you cannot hook more than 10,000 or 20,000 together. And, so at some weekend when he didn't play video games, he thought,
Exactly.
well, is that really true? Is that really, let me go to
And let's
first,
do it. Exactly.
let's think about it and come to the conclusion. It's only true because you're using the silly kind of cabling that you're doing.
Yeah.
We change the cabling and the way the data is actually flowing. I mean, the fact that they did it in like, what was it, 19...
Unheard of. Unheard of.
in half a year or less or something like that. But the point is more, it's a similar thing, right? Like I know what it is, I know how it works, we can clean it up so it's not such a nasty process. And if nobody wants to do it, we do it. If everybody says you cannot have a data center with now what looks like ultimately a million NVIDIA GPUs, all connected, all working simultaneously, supporting both full self-driving, but I think to a large extent it will also. And this is why you call it planetary, right? I'm calling it more like the age of abundance company. It all flows together. The Optimus needs basically the data center and the modeling support just as much as full self-driving needs it. So, the demand is almost infinite in that sense. Before we talk a little bit more like visioning into the age of abundance, how concerned are you, or maybe turn it around and say, should Tesla do something about it with these most recent decisions on energy generation?
I'm not concerned because in the end, they always, come to their senses. And it's actually already happening a bit. The first point is that for decades, nobody in America talked about nuclear. Now
Right.
nuclear is back on the table. And nuclear is, in my view, clean nuclear, right, is, in my view, the solution we should strive to. And nuclear is going to be a much quicker solution than we all anticipate once the money is behind it. So do I like what President Trump did on the sustainable energy side? No, I don't. Of course, I do not. But what the main reason I don't like it is because he still approved the lobbied subventions to gas and oil, right? I just find this, an old world thinking. I do believe that these companies don't need taxpayer money to survive, and we should just stop all that. But the lobbying industry in that part is just so powerful. And there's so many Congress people who got financed from that part that it bothers me. Politics bother me a lot because it's such an old world style still, and needs disruption. And the way Congress is set up, and here he goes with his America Party, Elon, right? But I do believe that they will come to their senses very quickly. And the nuclear part of it gives me the hope that they actually understand what's happening.
Okay, cool. And then I have another question in a similar direction. What do you think is the likelihood that the Chinese figure out either using currently available technology and just, refining it just like we are refining it here with like Intel and so forth to, I don't know if there's anything below 3 or 1 nanometer chips, or just find another solution that has similar or potentially even better results? Or do you think that they will always stay behind in that
No,
core
I actually do believe they are making enormous progress.
Okay.
I don't hate on the Chinese at all. I just understand, and I think also all of us do, the harm it did to US manufacturing. It actually did to European as well. I know very well the textile industry. You know, my brands, my age, like the Escadas and Gary Webers of Germany and whatever. Everybody is bankrupt
I only
now.
had like cost.
You go. But I mean, all those beautiful German brands that were known for their textiles, their cuts, but they were reasonably priced for the quality they had. I mean, they were expensive, but it was not Parisian chic where you are overpaid it. They all are out of business. And if you trace where it came from, it is obviously cheap manufacturing in Asia and mainly in China. So it's a shame what we did to our own industries. And we're actually doing in Europe at the moment to the car industry. What is happening with BYD to European car industry. So, but that doesn't mean I hate the Chinese. They're just ultra smart. They are ultra smart and obviously have cheaper labor and tougher work conditions in China than our oversensitive Europeans and Americans and Canadians, right? We can talk about how sensitive we all are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really with you there, Alexandra. The other point is, and this might make you chuckle a little bit, my dad was actually asked to participate in helping Volkswagen to literally break down the whole Volkswagen Santana manufacturing line and rebuild it in China, because the Santana was one of those models that happens every once in a while where you build something and nobody wants to buy it. And they were so convinced that this was the right car and it wasn't. So the question was, okay, where do we do it? This is actually historically the reason why Volkswagen had such a super high standing in the eyes of the Chinese, because these Santanas were basically the Western made to Western standards, quality and otherwise. And they were only driven around by the people from the Communist Party in China. Before they ever had, Deng Xiaoping and the whole, industrial revolution. So when you say, well, we helped them basically to be able to, and this is kind of like a funny little, for Tesla insiders, they knew with that manufacturing line how to do Spaltmaß from the get-go, while Tesla had to learn it over the years.
No gaps.
No gaps, right? Yeah. So, but the point, that's what I'm saying, right? Like somebody said, I have something here that I want to find someone who can do something with it, right? And I believe still to this day, the fact that their manufacturing is relatively off the bat high quality is because some companies said, we want to take advantage of these $2 labor rates. Yes. Right, and basically make more profit. And that's why I also find it disingenuous to say, well, we did this to our own industry and now it's the Chinese fault, right? They stole our industry.
Right, really right. You milked the cow for 20 years and now you don't like the cow anymore.
Well, not only that, then you also export your inflation to the cow.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm like somebody making, and I mean, we probably shouldn't talk about European car market, but this European car market is in for a couple of surprises. I mean, when the disruption hits from both sides, both cheaper and very good Chinese cars coming in and much better technology from Tesla, they can pretend, and they are continuing to pretend. I mean, I was talking to a German speaker the other week, and he said to me, "Oh, they're still selling in Germany that Volkswagen is at level 4 autonomy."
Oh, sure.
I mean, absolutely right. There we are. Why not level 5 while we're at it, right? and they still believe that in the German press and on the German ground, and you're just like, excuse me, okay.
Well, but I mean, the other thing is we both know, and I know that I don't want to get into this European stuff too much either, but there is more so, in my opinion and my observation, the almost to a level of propaganda influencing of the public with more.
Oh, you're so right.
You're so more successful than in the United States. Yes, we have this, you're red or you're blue, and we have kind of like this kind of camp tribalism going on. But when I speak, and I mean, even though I don't live in Germany for the last 30 years, but I obviously still have family and friends and stuff like that. And when I talk to them, there is a certain, I would call it, in using a little of the French naivete, to basically say, okay, should we be concerned that BYD and CATL are building huge factories in Hungary with the blessing of Viktor Orban?
Hungary and Turkey, yes, yes.
Right.
And
the answer
at
is
the end
yes.
of the year, in less than 6 months, there will be European Union built BYDs flooding the market at prices that with technology that nobody has ever seen and at prices that nobody has ever seen. No, you shouldn't be concerned. You still have 5 months to wait.
Like just believe the mainstream media and pay your GZ money and then you're good.
Exactly. That's exactly. No, I
right,
couldn't do it either. I go home. I mean, I still call it home once a year, 2-3 weeks, and then on my flight back, it's a long flight. I have a lot of time to think about it. I'm like grateful, grateful, grateful.
Yeah, well, we do basically, we have a place in Spain and a place in San Diego, and we invite the family to us.
Yeah, that's easy. Yeah.
So anyway, I want to go back to this age of abundance because I really think that that is a great topic to explore a little bit looking forward. When you look at, from your perspective, where AI is going, where the inference computing at Tesla is going, and where Optimus is going, for one, I have kind of two questions. One would be, how do you see that evolution as far as, you know, different generation versions from Optimus as well as the AI part? But also, would you do me the favor to speculate a little bit how you see living in the age of abundance is going to look like?
Yeah, I can do that. And it's pure speculation because I have no clue either. So Optimus, I think the first versions of Optimus that we will really meet, not just presentations, are going to be factory workers in Tesla-owned factories or SpaceX or whatever, but in the Elon universe. I think that's going to come for the end of this year. There will be Optimus versions, the next version, let's call it version 2. We will actually be at version 6 or 7 by then, but just for this discussion, let's just stack it up like that. So the next version will be the one where they sell these to other manufacturers for other factories, right? So the same usage case, but now expanding the TAM only. And then the third part will be for private use or small company use. And I do believe Optimus and other humanoid robots, but I do believe here again, Tesla will be by far dominating the market. It won't be the only ones, but it will be by far dominating the market because their solution is, like always, a general solution. It's a solution of vision to action. Anything you see today, Boston Dynamics, I'm always joking or whatever, is steered with a joystick, right? I mean, maybe pre-programmed or whatever, but it comes to the same principle that it is steered. Only Tesla has, both for the cars and for the bots, solved vision to action. Everybody else is still measuring, is still having whatever else tools. You can talk about LiDAR and whatever else. The only ones that have enough compute and have enough intelligence and have enough worked hard on it is Tesla, and has solved through the neural nets end to end. You see it. The computer in one way or the other has digested sufficient information to now by itself come up with the right reaction, right? That is what's happening every day in my car, in your car, in any other FSD-driven car. Yeah. And very soon will happen also with the bots. So initially, they will. So why are they going with the factories and then outside of factory in other factories and then the general use case? Because in the factory, the videos that you're going to feed the computer behind it, I try to always put it in easy words, are always more or less the same types of work. So the quantity of video you have to feed in is relatively little, right? When you expand to competitors, well, it's still the same type of setup. They may have factories that are a little bit set up differently, but the number of videos you need to train are not enormous. When you go to general public, it gets enormous. So I was actually making a joke, and I do it regularly on my X feed, about I want my Optimus to iron. I'm good old German
Oh,
ironing
I have a
every
whole
week.
list, not just
with
iron. I have a
I
list in
know,
my
but
white.
mine is ironing. Mine is ironing. So, and I'm very, very, very particular about ironing. The way I want my shirts and my dresses ironed. So I'm every couple of weeks I'm going, hey Tesla AI, where can I upload my ironing? Because I want that you will all be able to iron like Alexandra did, right? I may be dead one day. My legacy is going to be that your bot is going to iron your shirt like I would have done it.
Yeah.
And when people think this through, and please, to your audience, think this through. Everything that you're doing, it may be from gardening. If you enjoy it, by heaven means continue enjoying it. But if you don't enjoy it, or finally your back is hurting, or finally you enjoyed it a bit, but after half an hour you want to give up, everything that comes in that category will be done or doable by bots. And so this goes from elderly care, this goes to, hospitals, this goes to stuff that nobody wants to do, fixing solar panels on the roof, anything. And that's why the computer is so important, because for all these situations, you have to feed the initial videos of excellent work so that the computer can learn vision, action, how to now feed this all to the Optimus. And the Optimus will have the same interface that we currently have in the cars. Because what people don't understand is it's Tesla building this. It is not some chip that is coming from some NVIDIA or whatever else, AMD. No, this is a Tesla chip, and it's Tesla making this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing we talked earlier a little bit about the uniqueness, this Planetary Company being so highly vertically integrated. I oftentimes feel that people, and Tony Seba is one of the people who also points this out with his S-curves and stuff like that, that people have an even harder time to understand the vertical integration when you start throwing in software. But in my opinion, when I look at all the components, Optimus is basically ultra vertically integrated by Tesla, because all the things they make, not just make the hardware of the board, but they also have the data centers, they make the chips, they make the software, they basically run it all over the world. One thing that I'm curious about, because I already know I need at least two, one for me and one for Heidi, and maybe another one because, might have work enough for three.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm wanted to ask you, what I'm curious around, this transition that Tony speaks about from the age of extraction that we live in right now, and that's kind of coming to an end into this age of abundance. I have this vision that, let's say Elon is right, and in 2028, 2029, there are 10 million Optimuses or Optimi, whatever the right way is, made a year. And I'm thinking, okay, let's say one of them has been given to Alexandra and she teaches that one Optimus how to do the ironing of the shirts. And because it has probably at that time a 6G connection to the internet, those 10 million that were made that year, plus the other whatever 10 million that were made the 5 years beforehand, they will now all know how that ironing shirt.
That's right. And if you pay for the, I don't know, $3.99 to download it on yours, then yours can do it as well.
Yeah, that's the domestic package or something like that.
Exactly. And that's
But
the apps.
yeah, the question that I'm building towards is, you use this beautiful example of ironing the shirts, but when you think, anybody in the audience thinks about, not just because you do it so well and you have these super high standards, but just in general, I like the example of making dishes, right? And some Optimus somewhere is like helping in a 3-star, 4-star Michelin restaurant on how to do stuff. Now at whatever time you look, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, 2 billion Optimi, all know how to do this now.
Well, and not only do dishes, how to cook. My husband is a perfect cook, and I tell him, you have to now put the GoPro on. We have to have all this because I want you to film from the beginning to the end all the recipes, because we're going to feed them to Optimus, and then there will be a cookbook. And if you want the Michelle boiled eggs or scrambled eggs or whatever he does, well, you just click on the button, and then your Optimus can do it as well.
Right, and I see that part, and you explained that beautifully with uploading the video or feeding it the video. my question goes more in the direction, if you imagine a larger, like we are in this domestic age of abundance, usability of humanoid robots, maybe predominantly Optimus, where they can basically learn from observation.
Yeah.
What I'm a little bit curious about and want to ask you your opinion is, to me, this looks in my mind like a tidal wave that nobody anticipates.
I agree. I
Or
agree.
like
And
the
actually,
S-curve that Tony has,
yeah,
like it's not just incrementally going to get better if you have millions and millions of these things out there observing stuff and telling everybody else how to
yeah,
do it.
yeah. And they will share, each of them will learn. Some of the stuff will be learned just in your private settings. Some of them is shareable and will improve all of us. But I think what is the most astonishing is that it's not only coming from the bots, it's also obviously coming from the large language models. I have a theory, and if this gets too crazy, interrupt me, because I could go on for it for ages, but I have a theory that these large language models within the next 5 years really disrupt the way work is organized. At the moment, we're still in a very old style pattern between workers, middle management, and upper management. And I believe this crust of middle management is going to explode and disappear. It's actually already useless now, but since they have the communication factor from up to down, and if they're always very good at setting up meetings, to discuss meetings, to follow up on meetings, and keeping themselves busy and indispensable, it needs a disruption like AI to explode that system. So in my view, you have this whole middle management, I call it the crust, that actually, cements in a very negative way the way we work, because instead of just getting the work done, we have to fight these people. I mean, in France, I've spent most of my adult life in France. It's all these fonctionnaires and all these supervisors that just ruin your day, and I think this is all gonna go, because anybody and everybody has now Grok, or if you want to use something else, ChatGPT or whatever, to actually get very quickly to the right solution, and you can work in a much more productive way. And upper management will very quickly understand that they don't need these barriers and these people that slow down and micromanage anymore. And so that is gonna actually liberate, in an early stage of this age of abundance, that's going to liberate people in their work. Lots of people actually hate their work because of their middle management above
Right.
them. And I think that's going to help. And I also am strongly convinced that there are certain professions that will just continue existing. The manufacturing job will not look the same anymore, but there will still be manufacturing jobs. The lady doing my nails will still do my nails. The chiropractor is still going to do chiropractic. So there are quite a lot of jobs. They may slightly change, or they may have help from AI or bots, but they will still be existing the way they are. And then there is a huge part of our population that will just be consumers in a healthy way in this age of abundance, and they will be concentrating on raising their families. We will probably reevaluate completely how we want to be parents, what we want to teach our children. I think the arts are going to have a whole renaissance of, how important they are. Sharing things, group building, community building will become much more important. So I believe us as a society, if we get this right, will make actually much more progress towards a more pleasant life with higher abundance, just because, like I explained earlier, there's just going to be such a win in cost of services and goods that are provided, that it will become actually, we will be rich. A good thing to do at the moment, what I always try to point out, is be rich in assets, because assets will appreciate in this scenario much more than money does.
Yeah, I think that too, even though I'm not fully clear that I can explain it. If I really think the ability of humanoid robots and AI to its full extent, I'm not quite sure. But one vision that I'm also kind of attaching to this is, and as an old fan of, Star Trek and Starship Enterprise and that kind of stuff, I think this could, if we not keep hammering that we have enemies that we need to keep at bay and that need to be protectionist against and stuff. Just like you said, I have no problem. I would actually like to go to China and explore it and get to know the people and the amazing stuff they do there. So if we can avoid that, I think there's an opportunity there to get to like the United Humans of Earth, right? Instead of everybody having their own little fiefdom and doing everything individually. Maybe coming a little bit towards the end, I'm kind of curious, the way you described it, do you think doing the nails and doing the chiropractic is out of fear or not yet capability of the Optimus?
Well, that's actually a good question, because I mean, I've seen now machines doing nails. I'm the machines, there's no way. I just love my nails too much and I want them done in a certain way. I'm not going to give my hands into a machine and pull them out and see what's happening. But will Optimus be precise enough to do nails? I mean, it should, right? If my theory is correct that they can learn anything, they
can thread a needle, right? Like that's what.
And you know, doing nails is not that complicated if it can be. So maybe I'm wrong. I mean, the chiropractor, I still believe there is something, you know, that the human hand of the chiropractor feels when they put you back together. You know, that there's a reaction of your.
No, absolutely. But see, for me, you know, I want to leave this. Maybe we can have another conversation at another time. Just think about, you take Neuralink, right? And you think a couple generations ahead together with a couple generations forward with Optimus. So now you can have the best chiropractor in the world connected to Neuralink, doing his thing.
Who tells you
Well, so basically any Optimus connected to that would not just get the data, right? I think we're making the mistake that we oftentimes think about it purely in data, code, logical, spreadsheets, plus mathematics. Yes, it in the end is that. But there is a data set that says exactly how much pressure, exactly in which position, exactly after, you know, I mean, you saw that.
Very good point.
You know, you can take the egg and put it without breaking it. You could actually see in the demo, and that was Gen 2. Yeah. It could already sense how much pressure do I need to keep it without breaking it.
Right.
Neuralink and the AI that would be available by the time that these things come.
Can you imagine if actually your Neuralink, I never thought about that, but if your Neuralink can be linked to your Optimus?
Yeah, totally.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. That's wonderful, yeah.
And that's actually, I mean, why you said we need to feed them video, I would say they should just observe how you do the ironing and your Neuralink will...
That's true. You know. That's true.
So that's for next
time. I don't need the GoPro anymore. Love that.
All right, cool. So I want to say, you know, episode 500 is coming to an end. It's really awesome. I want to ask you, by the way, after we close, to stay maybe one more minute if you can. It was wonderful to have you, and it was a very broad conversation like they most of the time are, and I want to really say this, I'm very proud that I have a chance to have that with you. I was always envious of her, but so now I can say, well, she did it with me. So Alexandra, thank you for all you do and for what you do for all these retail shareholders, myself included. So maybe till next time.
Maybe we should tell people that if they want to follow me on X, my crazy name is Tesla Boomer Mama on X. So please do follow me. Please do reach out. I'm always happy to have more followers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.